Jackie, for more on this, joining us now, former acting secretary for the DHS, Chad Wolf. Mr. Secretary, thank you for taking time, and what a perfect guest to talk about what we just heard from our great reporter, Bill Malusian, down there. And we was talking about the 650 migrants stopped in Tamaulipas, many of them, half of them children. And I can't help but think it's interesting that it coincided on the same day that your counterpart, Secretary Mayorkas and Secretary Blinken, were in Mexico talking about border security issues. What do you make of it?
Well, I'd say the incident that we saw with, hundreds of migrants in those tractor-trailer trucks is just, again, another symptom of this very inhumane immigration and border policy that the Biden administration has. Again, they don't want to talk to you. You don't see Biden administration officials or the secretary or any other administration official talking about that type of seizure and the pain and the dangerous journey that those migrants are being put through. But they're doing that because they know that the U.S. border is open. And so the Biden administration is sending them a signal to take that dangerous journey, and I think that's wrong. It certainly needs to change. Look, whether you have the Secretary of State, the DHS Secretary, and the Attorney General down there in Mexico talking about hopefully security and border security, but I know they're also talking about a whole host of other issues. These are talks that happen in any administration, that happen all the time. The question, though, is what is changing on that border as a result of those talks? What is changing on the enforcement posture, both in the U.S. and on the Mexico side? And I don't think that we're seeing any differences. We're certainly not seeing any concrete actions that they're taking as a result of those talks.
Well, and that's why I was so excited to speak with you, because what specifically, if you were in Secretary Mayorkas's chair in Mexico, what would you ask Mexico for? I just got back from the Mexico's southern border and portrayed how open that is. It is absolutely being flooded, and I'm going to get on a plane in a few hours and go to Panama, to the Darien Gap, where there are tens of thousands of Haitians on their way now. So to be constructive, what can Mexico do? What should the U.S. be asking for?
Well, the Mexican government can do a variety of different things. They can close their southern border down to that illegal migration that we see. It's not easy for them. They don't have the same resources and infrastructure that the U.S. has, but it is doable. They can deploy their equivalent of the National Guard down there to stop individuals coming across that southern border that don't have the correct paperwork. They can shut that down. They can shut down. They have a number of other border checkpoints within the interior of Mexico. They need to be properly staffed, but you need to enforce it. Time and time again, we've seen and heard of reports where migrants come through these border checkpoints or other checkpoints in Mexico. They don't have the right paperwork, and yet they continue on their journey. You have to enforce that. They need to start flying or repatriating folks from Mexico back to Central America, back to South America, back to Haiti, back to all the countries that they're picking up. So they not only need to stop them and apprehend them and detain them if they have no legal right to be in Mexico, but then they need to remove them from Mexico back to their home countries instead of simply releasing them for them to continue onto the southern border.
I want to get your reaction. Bill Malusian alluded to it, and I retweeted Vice President Harris's video she put out of visiting a day school, visiting with these school children, literally, Chad, playing bingo with them on the day that Blinken, Mayorkas, and Merrick Garland are down in Mexico trying to solve the crisis. Your reaction?
Well, again, it's quite unbelievable that you have the border czar who is in charge of, she says not border security, but she's talking about the root causes of migration. That's what this team was doing in Mexico, talking about some of those root causes, meeting with the president of Mexico. So it's certainly at the vice president's level to be down there, to be engaged on these discussions. And she's completely absent. She's absent from any follow-up to her previous visit to Guatemala and then to Mexico, but also from the southern border. She's been to El Paso, which is not seeing the vast majority of the illegal crossings. We need leadership, and we need leadership from the White House, which is lacking, and from the department, which is lacking. And I think that's why you continue to see the same failed border policy month in and month out, which is delivering the same results.
You talk about leadership, Mr. Secretary. How can they get this under control? And tell me how this ends.
Well, I think there's very specific things that they can do. Again, we left them a roadmap on initiatives and policies that worked, whether that's the Remain in Mexico program, the asylum cooperative agreements. Unfortunately, just last night, which we heard, canceling border wall contracts in the RGV, in the Rio Grande Valley, there in Texas, which is ground zero for the vast majority of these illegal apprehensions. And so in the midst of a 21-year crisis, high crisis, they decide to cancel border wall contracts. They decide to change ICE guidelines, which they did last week, where you're not able to remove individuals from the interior of the country if they get past the Border Patrol. So again, the Biden administration is carrying out an agenda that is not pro-enforcement, that is not the rule of law. They continue to implement initiatives that continue to allow and attract individuals to the border.
It sure doesn't seem like it's stopping anytime soon. Former Acting DHS Secretary Chad Wolf. Chad, thank you.